Hi everyone, welcome to the channel After All That Years.
Hello, my name is Thomas, and at 62 years old, I never imagined I'd be telling this story. Until recently, I thought I understood what heartbreak meant, but nothing could have prepared me for the devastation that unfolded when I discovered the truth about my wife's secret life. For 14 years, I was married to Rebecca. We had built what I believed was a solid partnership, raising our two children, 11-year-old Jake and 8-year-old Emma, our bright little star who could make anyone smile just by walking into a room. Our house felt warm, filled with the routines and traditions that make a family feel like home. I was content, maybe even proud of what we'd created together. Rebecca had this magnetic personality that drew people to her. She was intelligent, witty, and possessed this natural ability to make everyone around her feel important and heard. I was completely devoted to her, never questioning her loyalty or commitment to our family. Looking back now, I realize how naive that trust made me. The unraveling began when Rebecca announced she needed a weekend away. She called it a spiritual retreat, some kind of wellness workshop with her girlfriends. She'd been acting differently for weeks, more distant, preoccupied, but I chalked it up to work stress and the usual challenges of juggling everything. "Go ahead and recharge," I told her, meaning every word. "The kids and I will hold down the fort." She packed light, kissed my forehead, hugged Jake and Emma quickly, and drove off. I stood in the doorway watching her car disappear down our street, completely unaware that the woman I'd trusted with my heart was heading to spend the weekend with another man. That evening, after I'd gotten the kids settled for the night, I noticed Rebecca's tablet sitting on our kitchen island. This struck me as odd, because she was normally obsessive about her electronics, never leaving them behind or unlocked. At first, I planned to just set it aside for her return, but as the night wore on, something gnawed at me. Call it intuition, call it dread, whatever it was wouldn't let me rest. I'm not the type to snoop through someone's personal belongings. In all our years together, I'd never felt compelled to check her phone or question her whereabouts. But that night, something felt fundamentally wrong. When I powered on the tablet, it opened immediately to her messaging app, no security lock, no password protection. What I found there shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. There were endless message threads between Rebecca and someone named Gary. The early conversations seemed innocent enough, casual jokes, friendly exchanges, but as I continued reading, the nature of their relationship became unmistakably clear. "These next 2 days can't come fast enough," one message read. "I'm going crazy having to pretend everything's normal at home." "Don't worry, he's completely clueless," came the response. "I've reserved that little place we talked about. Just the two of us, no distractions." My hands started shaking as I scrolled through months of deception. There were intimate photos Rebecca had taken in our bedroom, sent to this man with messages that made me physically sick. This wasn't some spontaneous mistake or moment of weakness. This was a calculated, ongoing affair that she had been orchestrating right under my nose. I sat there in our kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the life we'd built together, feeling like everything solid beneath my feet had suddenly turned to quicksand. How had I missed this? How long had she been living this double life while I went about my days, trusting her completely? Sleep was impossible that night. Instead, I found myself reviewing our entire marriage, analyzing every late meeting, every unexplained absence, every time she'd seemed emotionally distant. The signs had been there all along, but I'd been either too trusting or too blind to recognize them for what they were. By sunrise, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to confront her immediately. I needed time to think clearly and plan my next moves. Most importantly, I had to protect Jake and Emma from the explosion I knew was coming. They deserved better than to be caught in the crossfire of their mother's betrayal. When Rebecca returned home the next evening, She had no idea that everything had changed. The life she thought she was returning to no longer existed. I watched from the front window as Rebecca's car pulled into our driveway. Jake and Emma were safely staying with my brother Kevin across town. I'd spent the past 24 hours quietly dismantling the illusion of normalcy we'd lived in for so long. Now, all that remained was for her to discover the new reality she had created through her choices. Her footsteps sounded different on the porch, hesitant in a way I'd never noticed before. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, calling out my name with a slight uncertainty in her voice. I remained silent, letting her walk deeper into the house and absorb the emptiness. The note I'd left was brief and direct, placed right next to the tablet she'd forgotten. Rebecca, the children and I are gone. I know about Gary. Don't attempt to explain. Thomas. From my vantage point in the hallway, I watched her face transform as she read those words. Confusion gave way to shock, then to something approaching panic. She grabbed the tablet, frantically scrolling through the messages she'd thought were private. The color drained from her cheeks as she realized the full scope of what I'd discovered. "Thomas!" she called out, louder this time, her voice cracking. "Where are you? This isn't what you think." She ran upstairs, her heels clicking rapidly against the hardwood, searching for Jake and Emma. But their rooms were empty. I'd packed their favorite belongings, leaving behind only the furniture and memories that now felt tainted. When she came back downstairs, she was breathing hard, her phone clutched like a lifeline. She tried calling me repeatedly. I could feel my phone vibrating in my pocket, but I didn't answer. Eventually, she left a voicemail, her voice desperate and pleading. "Thomas, please, you have to let me explain. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. Whatever you think you saw, it's not the whole story. Call me back, please." But I'd heard enough lies to last several lifetimes. I waited until she collapsed onto our couch, her head buried in her hands, before I finally emerged from the shadows. She jumped up when she saw me, relief and fear warring in her expression. "Thomas, thank goodness! What's happening? Where are Jake and Emma?" I stood there studying this woman who had shared my bed, raised my children, and destroyed my trust. She looked like the same person I'd loved for 14 years, but now she felt like a complete stranger. "Don't you dare ask about our children," I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "You forfeited the right to worry about them when you decided to betray this family." She opened and closed her mouth several times, struggling to find words. "Betray? Thomas, I don't understand what you're—" "Stop lying to me, Rebecca," I cut her off sharply. "I read every message. I saw the photos. I know about Gary and your weekend getaway. The truth is right there on your tablet." The last bit of color left her face, and she stumbled backward against the coffee table. "Thomas, let me explain." "Explain what, exactly?" My voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "That you've been sneaking around with another man while I was here taking care of our family? That you've been lying to my face every single day? What possible explanation could make any of this acceptable?" Tears began streaming down her cheeks, but they had no effect on me. I'd already done my crying hours of it, in fact, as I'd processed the destruction of everything I'd believed in. "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "It didn't mean anything real. I never stopped loving you." I laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through our empty house. "Didn't mean anything? You risked our marriage, our family, our children's security for something that didn't mean anything? How stupid do you think I am?" She reached toward me, but I stepped away. "Thomas, please, I made a terrible mistake. But we can work through this. Think about Jake and Emma. Think about what we've built together." "For the children?" I repeated, my anger flaring. "Don't you dare bring them into this. Do you have any comprehension of what you've done to them? To me? You didn't just destroy our marriage, Rebecca. You destroyed our entire family. She sank back onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably, but I felt no sympathy. I'd spent the last day grieving, raging, and feeling my world crumble around me. I was finished feeling sorry for either of us. I've already contacted a lawyer, I said flatly. The divorce paperwork will be ready within the week. We'll discuss custody arrangements through our attorneys. As far as I'm concerned, this marriage is over. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. You're leaving me? I nodded. I am, and you'll have plenty of time to think about why. I turned and walked out the door, leaving her alone with the wreckage of what had once been our home. As I drove away, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. The hardest part was behind me, or so I believed. What I didn't know was that Rebecca wasn't planning to let me go without a fight. The real battle was just beginning. The drive to Kevin's house should have felt liberating, but instead, anxiety twisted in my stomach. I kept thinking about Jake and Emma. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this nightmare. At least they were safe now, away from the lies and manipulation. I tried to focus on the road ahead, but my phone kept buzzing incessantly. Rebecca again. I ignored the first call, then the second. By the fifth attempt, my patience evaporated. I pulled over and answered, my voice sharp with frustration. What do you want, Rebecca? Her voice came through between sobs. Thomas, please, you can't just walk away like this. Let me try to explain. It was meaningless, just a stupid mistake. Stop, I interrupted, my tone ice-cold. You keep saying it was meaningless. Do you honestly think that makes it better? Do you think that excuses lying to me and our children? You made your choices, Rebecca. Now you have to live with the consequences. There was silence for a moment, then her tone shifted. The pleading gave way to anger. You're being completely unreasonable. It was one mistake, and you're destroying our family over it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm destroying our family? Rebecca, you cheated. You lied. You snuck around behind my back. This isn't on me. It's entirely on you. Before she could respond, I hung up. The last thing I needed was more of her twisted logic and self-serving excuses. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and continued driving, determined not to let her manipulation drag me back into her web of lies. But Rebecca wasn't finished with me yet. When I arrived at Kevin's house, he greeted me with a worried expression. She's been calling here too, he said, holding up his phone. What's going on, Tom? I gave him the condensed version of the story. His face grew darker with each detail, and by the time I finished, he looked ready to drive over to our house and confront Rebecca himself. You did the right thing, he said firmly. Jake and Emma need stability, and they can't get that if you're constantly wondering what she's up to next. I nodded, grateful for his support, but I knew this was far from over. Rebecca was too stubborn and too used to getting her way to accept defeat quietly. Sure enough, later that evening, she showed up at Kevin's door. It was nearly 10 o'clock when the doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised. I'd been expecting this confrontation all day. Kevin answered the door to find Rebecca standing there, her makeup smeared from crying, her usually perfect hair disheveled. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, but her eyes still burned with determination. "Where's Thomas?" she demanded, trying to push past Kevin. He crossed his arms, blocking the doorway. "He doesn't want to see you. Go home, Rebecca." She forced her way past him into the hallway. "Thomas!" she yelled, her voice echoing through the house. I stepped out of the living room, keeping my expression neutral. "What are you doing here, Rebecca?" "We need to talk," she said, her voice breaking. "You can't just run off with the children like this. It's not right." "Right," I repeated, my voice rising. "You think this is about what's right? You lied to me, cheated on me, and now you want to lecture me about fairness? You're incredible. She took a step closer, her hands trembling. I made a mistake, okay? But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can— No, I said firmly. There's no working through this. You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences. Tears streamed down her face, but I remained unmoved. Kevin stepped in, his protective instincts kicking in. You've said what you came to say, Rebecca. Now it's time to leave. The kids are asleep, and they don't need to witness this drama. Rebecca looked at me one last time, her eyes pleading. Thomas, please don't do this. Don't take them away from me. Her words stung, but I forced myself to stay strong. You took them away from yourself, Rebecca. Now go. She hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked out the door, her sobs fading into the night. As Kevin locked the door behind her, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. This was the right decision, but it didn't make it any easier to bear. What I didn't realize was that Rebecca's next move would be her most shocking and underhanded yet. The following morning started peacefully, almost too peacefully. Jake and Emma were playing in the backyard with their cousins, their laughter a welcome distraction from the chaos brewing in the adult world. I tried to focus on their joy, to ground myself in their innocence, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Rebecca was planning something. My instincts proved correct when my phone rang. It was my supervisor at work, and his tone immediately put me on edge. Thomas, I need to discuss something personal with you, he said hesitantly. All right, I replied cautiously. I just received some emails, he continued. They contain photographs and some serious allegations. Thomas, what's going on with your personal situation? My stomach dropped. What kind of photographs? Personal ones of you and your wife, along with claims that you're mentally unstable and have essentially kidnapped your children. The sender is threatening to involve law enforcement unless you return the kids to their mother immediately. I gripped the phone so tightly, my knuckles went white. This is complete fabrication. Rebecca is trying to manipulate the situation because I left her after discovering her affair. My supervisor sighed. Look, I don't want to get involved in your personal matters, but you need to address this quickly. It's already spreading, and whoever sent this is clearly trying to damage your reputation. After I hung up, my blood was boiling. Rebecca had crossed a line I didn't even know she was capable of crossing, sending false accusations to my workplace, trying to paint me as some kind of criminal. This wasn't just desperation anymore. This was warfare. I immediately called Kevin and filled him in. He shook his head in disbelief. She's lost her mind, Tom. You need to call your lawyer right away. By the time I got off the phone with my attorney, my worst fears were confirmed. Rebecca had already filed a police report claiming I had abducted Jake and Emma and was refusing to allow her access to them. My lawyer assured me that since I had taken the children to a safe location and had informed Rebecca of their whereabouts, it wasn't legally considered kidnapping. But that didn't mean Rebecca couldn't make things extremely messy for all of us. And messy it became. That evening, there was a knock at Kevin's door. This time, it wasn't Rebecca. It was two police officers, looking stern as they asked to speak with me. I invited them in, trying to keep my voice steady. I assume this is about Rebecca's report. One of the officers nodded. We've been informed of a potential custody dispute. We're here to verify that the children are safe and well cared for. I led them to the backyard where Jake and Emma were still playing, their laughter ringing through the evening air. As you can see, they're perfectly fine, I said. The officers spoke briefly with the children, then with Kevin and his wife. They seemed satisfied that everything was above board. But before they left, one of them turned to me. Sir, I'd strongly advise you to resolve this matter through the court system as soon as possible. These situations have a tendency to spiral out of control quickly. Spiral out of control. Those words stuck with me. Rebecca was already spiraling, and I knew this was only the beginning of her campaign of revenge. The next day, she attempted to show up at the children's school, demanding to see them. Fortunately, I had already spoken with the principal and provided legal documentation explaining the situation. Rebecca was escorted off the property, furious but unsuccessful in her attempt to create another scene. She called me that night, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you've won, Thomas? You think you can take my children away from me? Just wait and see what happens next." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know what she was planning, but I knew it wouldn't be good. And I was right. Because the next time Rebecca came after me, she wasn't coming alone. Several days after Rebecca's meltdown at the school, I was starting to hope she might finally be backing down. The legal process was moving forward slowly, and I was prepared to let my attorney handle the custody arrangements while I focused on helping Jake and Emma adjust to our new reality. But Rebecca was never one to admit defeat quietly. I should have known she was regrouping, planning her next attack. It was a Sunday evening, and we were just finishing dinner at Kevin's house. The kids were upstairs watching a movie, and I was enjoying a rare moment of peace, drinking coffee with Kevin and his wife Linda. Then we heard a car pull into the driveway. The engine didn't shut off immediately, and I knew instinctively that it was Rebecca. But she wasn't alone. Linda peered through the curtains, her face darkening. "She's brought someone with her," she said. I joined her at the window and saw Rebecca stepping out of her car, followed by a tall man in an expensive suit. He looked like either a lawyer or someone trying very hard to look like one. Rebecca's expression was set with grim determination as she marched up to the front door, her companion close behind. "What now?" Linda muttered, crossing her arms. I sighed, already feeling the weight of another confrontation. "Stay with the kids," I told them, heading for the door. When I opened it, Rebecca didn't even wait for me to speak. "Thomas," she said sharply, her eyes blazing with anger. "This is Mr. Bentley. He's here to help us reach a reasonable solution. We're taking this to the next level, whether you cooperate or not." I raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Mediation? You mean intimidation? What exactly are you trying to accomplish here, Rebecca?" Bentley stepped forward, holding a thick folder. "Mr. Stevens," he began in a smooth, practiced voice, "my client simply wants reasonable access to her children. She's willing to resolve this amicably, but your actions have forced her to escalate the matter." "Amicably," I repeated, my voice rising. "She's been spreading lies about me, filing false police reports, and trying to destroy my reputation at work. That's your definition of amicable?" Rebecca's face twisted with rage. "You stole my children, Thomas. You didn't even give me a chance to explain anything. You just ran away like a coward." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "I didn't steal anyone, Rebecca. I protected our children. And don't you dare act like this is my fault. You brought this entirely on yourself." Bentley stepped in again, his tone condescending. "Mr. Stevens, we're not here to argue. We're here to find a solution. If you refuse to cooperate, my client will have no choice but to pursue emergency custody through the courts." I stared at him, my blood boiling. Emergency custody based on what? Her lies? Good luck with that. Before either of them could respond, Linda appeared at my side, her presence a quiet but firm show of support. "Rebecca," she said, her voice sharp, "you're not helping your case by showing up here and making threats. You've already done enough damage. Leave, or I'll call the police myself." Rebecca's expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered, turning her glare back to me. "This isn't over, Thomas," she hissed. "I'll see you in court." With that, she spun around and marched back to her car, Bentley following close behind. I watched as they drove away, frustration and anger knotting in my chest. "That woman has completely lost her mind," Linda muttered, locking the door behind them. "What's her end game here?" I shook my head. "She wants control. She can't stand the fact that she's lost it, and now she's doing everything possible to get it back." Kevin joined us, his expression serious. "You need to be careful, Tom. Women like her, they don't fight fair. She'll hit you where it hurts most." I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the confrontation, wondering what Rebecca's next move would be. I thought I was prepared for anything, but I underestimated just how far she was willing to go to destroy me. The following week passed in tense anticipation. My lawyer filed for full custody, citing Rebecca's erratic behavior and false accusations as evidence of her inability to provide a stable environment for the children. I knew it wouldn't be an easy battle, but I had confidence that the truth would prevail. Or so I thought. It was a Friday afternoon when my world nearly came crashing down again. I was picking Jake and Emma up from school when my phone buzzed with a notification. At first, I ignored it, focusing on my children as they ran toward the car, their backpacks bouncing with each step. But when I glanced at my screen, my heart stopped. It was an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "Thomas Stevens, the truth you've been hiding." Heitu. Against my better judgment, I opened it. What I found made my blood run cold. Attached to the email were screenshots of private text messages between Linda and me, conversations that had been taken completely out of context and manipulated to make it appear as though we were having an affair. There were also doctored photographs that made it look like Linda and I had been meeting secretly behind Kevin's back. It was all fabricated, but it was convincing enough to plant seeds of doubt in anyone who didn't know the real story. The email ended with a chilling message. "You want to play dirty? Two can play that game." I knew immediately who had sent it. Rebecca was trying to destroy not just my life, but Linda's as well. She wanted to isolate me, to make me look like the villain, and she didn't care whose life she ruined in the process. I looked at my kids in the rearview mirror. Jake and Emma were laughing about something that had happened at school, completely oblivious to how close we all were to losing everything we'd worked to rebuild. As I drove home, my mind was racing. Rebecca had crossed every conceivable line. This wasn't just about custody anymore. It was a war for control, and she was willing to burn everything down to win it. But I wasn't going to let her succeed. Not this time. Not ever. After receiving that email, I knew I had to act quickly. Rebecca was completely out of control, and if I didn't counter her lies with the truth, she might actually succeed in dragging me and everyone I cared about down with her. That night, after putting Jake and Emma to bed, I sat down with Kevin and Linda. I showed them the email, and Kevin's face grew darker as he scrolled through the fabricated texts and doctored images. "She's completely insane," he muttered. "Do you think anyone will actually believe this garbage?" "She doesn't need everyone to believe it," I replied. "She just needs enough doubt to damage my case in court." Linda shook her head, her voice firm with resolve. "We're not letting her win, Tom. You have the truth on your side, and we'll support you completely. Let her try to explain how she got access to private messages that she clearly manipulated." That night, I forwarded the email to my lawyer, along with a detailed explanation of the situation. He assured me that we could use Rebecca's actions to demonstrate her instability and malicious intent to the court. "Judges don't look kindly on people who resort to these kinds of underhanded tactics," he told me. "Stay calm, follow my lead, and we'll get through this." But Rebecca wasn't finished yet. A week later, we found ourselves in court. Rebecca sat across the room, her expression a mixture of defiance and smugness. She had brought Bentley with her, and he wasted no time painting Rebecca as a victim, a loving mother who was being unfairly separated from her children by a vindictive husband. When it was my turn, my lawyer calmly dismantled their arguments piece by piece. He presented clear evidence of Rebecca's false police reports, her attempts to manipulate my workplace, and, most damaging of all, the email containing the doctored messages. Rebecca's face turned pale as my lawyer revealed how she had illegally accessed Linda's phone to steal and alter private conversations. The judge's expression grew increasingly stern as the evidence mounted. "Ms. Stevens," the judge said, her voice heavy with disapproval, "your actions demonstrate a troubling pattern of dishonesty and poor judgment. This court's primary concern is the well-being of the children, and your behavior raises serious questions about your ability to provide them with a stable, healthy environment." Rebecca tried to speak, but the judge silenced her with a raised hand. "This is not the forum for excuses, Ms. Stevens. This is about what's best for Jake and Emma, and it's clear that Mr. Stevens has acted in their best interests throughout this ordeal." When the judge awarded me full custody, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Rebecca was granted supervised visitation, but it was obvious that the court had seen through her lies and manipulation. As we left the courthouse, Rebecca shot me a look that could have melted steel. "You think you've won, Thomas?" she hissed. "This isn't over." But I wasn't afraid of her threats anymore. The truth had prevailed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe freely again. Back at Kevin's house, Jake and Emma greeted me with hugs, their laughter like a healing balm for my frayed nerves. For their sake, I knew I had to rebuild our lives piece by piece, no matter how challenging it might be. Months passed, and while the scars of Rebecca's betrayal remained, life began to settle into a new rhythm. I found a place for us, a small but comfortable house, where the kids and I could truly start fresh. Kevin and Linda remained our anchors, always there with support and encouragement when things felt overwhelming. Rebecca's visits with the children were infrequent and awkward. Her anger and bitterness had only intensified, but I made it crystal clear that Jake and Emma would not be used as weapons in whatever game she was still trying to play. Gradually, the chaos she had created began to fade into the background. One evening, as I watched Jake and Emma playing in our new backyard, I realized something I hadn't felt in a very long time: genuine peace. This ordeal had taught me more than I ever wanted to know about betrayal, resilience, and the incredible strength it takes to rebuild after everything falls apart. Rebecca's actions had shattered the life I thought I had, but they also revealed something profound: the importance of standing up for myself and my children, no matter how difficult the battle becomes. For anyone reading this who has faced a similar situation, my advice is straightforward. Don't let someone else's lies define your story. Fight for the truth, and never lose sight of what truly matters. As for Rebecca, I wish I could say I understand why she did what she did, but I've stopped trying to make sense of it all. Some people are simply too damaged to see the destruction they cause around them. All I can do now is focus on giving Jake and Emma the stable, loving home they deserve. And I've come to realize that's more than enough.